So you can do that, rework the problem on a separate piece of paper and turn them in sometime next week. Next section is all about graphing, which is a fun section. Today, I guess there's like 3 or 4 sections, but we'll get into it today and continue it on Monday. The first section is just introducing graphing. So the first section, you have your coordinate system, and it's created by 2 number lines. So you have your X number line and your Y number line. I say it's a number line because here is 0, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then on this side you go to the negative. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Just like a number line would, you have your positives to the right, your negatives to the left, and then this one's like a vertical number line where you have your positives up and your negatives down. All right, so this creates 4 different sections here. This is called quadrants. They're quadrant means 4. So quadrant, this is quadrant 1, and then you go counterclockwise. So quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. So you start here and then you go counterclockwise. The reason you start here is because this is the one spot where X and Y are both positive. Okay, so if you go through each of these, you can see that in quadrant 1, the X's are positive. So any number right here, the X's are going to be positive and the Y's are going to be positive. Over here, if you go to quadrant 2, your X's will be negative because I have negative numbers going to the left, but I'm still positive on the Y because it's going up. So X's are negative and Y's are positive. Over here, they're both going to be negative. So my X's are negative. And going down, my Y's are negative. And then over here, my X's will be positive and my Y's will be going down negative. So the reason they talk about that one is because they may ask you to where a point is in a quadrant. But it is nice to know because here your X's and Y's are going to be the same. They're both going to be positive. Here your X and Y's are the same also. They're both going to be negative. And then in quadrant 2 and 4, they're going to be different. Okay, so most of this section is just talking about this, and then towards the end of it, it starts to ask you to plot points. So a point is always in the form of X, Y. X and Y. So you have X comes first and Y comes second. So if I give you a point, let me get some points here. The point 2, 3, that means that's your X value and that's your Y value. So I go to X2 and then go up to Y3, and that would give me that point right there. We'll call that point A. So if I had -3, -2, I'd go to X's first. So I go to -3 and then down to -2, and that would give me point B. Okay. Or if I had 4, -4, my X is 4, my Y is -4, so that would give me this point right here. Or we're about 3, 0. So here my X is 3 and my Y is 0. That means I don't go up or down at all, so I just put my point right there on it. All right, what if let's figure out what point E is. So what is, here, let's just do this. What's this one? It would be 0, 5, right? I don't go left or right at all, so my X is 0, and then I went up 5, so that'd be my Y, which is 5. Or what is this one? It'd be -3, 4. Yeah, so X is -3, Y is 4. All right, so that's a lot of this section. I'm just kind of introducing you to that. The other part of this section would be starting to look at the equation of the lines algebraically. So an equation of a line, I always forget to talk about this, so I'll talk about it right now. The standard form of a line is AX plus BY equals C, where A, B, and C are just numbers. So an example of that would be like 2X plus 3Y equals 6. Okay. So that's just what an equation of a line looks like. I think in 3.2 they start asking you to determine if it is an equation of a line or not. If it has an X and a Y in it, if it has just an X and a Y in it, or an x or a y, it is an equation of a line. If you see something like x squared plus y equals 6, this one's not a line because of that squared right there. Okay. So it just has an x or a y or both in it. The last couple questions in this section talk about whether a point is on that line. So if I were to look at this line real quick, give me a second to draw it right. Oh, wait. So what we're gonna learn how to graph these today, but this is what the equation of the line would look like. This is what the graphical representation of that line is. So all of these create a line. So the last couple sections, our problems in here, determine if the point is on that line. You're supposed to determine if the point is on that line. So a line is made up of all these different points. Okay, I can draw a point anywhere. So I can pick any of these points. So if x was 3 right here, my y is going to be 0. So I know the point 3, 0 is on that line. Okay, so if I can pick all these points, I can pick any one I want, and it'll give me those. So I may ask, okay, so is the point 0, 2 on this line? Is it on the line? So the way you find that is that you have an x and a y. So you just take that and you plug it in. You plug in a 0 for your x, you plug a 2 in for your y, and see if that works. Well, that becomes 0, right? 3 times 2 is 6. 6 does equal 6. So since that worked, that point is on that line. Okay. If I had like 1, 5, let's see if the point 1, 5 is on this line. So again, we plug in a 1 for our x, we plug a 5 in for our 6. So here I get 2 plus 15. Does 2 plus 15 equal 6? No. So here, this point is not on this line. So this one is no, this one is yes. And again, you can look at our graph here and tell that that point 1, 5 is not on the line. But the last one does you just plug in the point to see if it works. If it works, it's on the line. If it doesn't work, it's not on the line. The first part of 3.2 is determining if it is an equation of the line, which is just if it has an x and a y or an x or a y. It's a line. If it has like an x squared or anything different in there, it is not a line. All right, so there are 3 different types of ways to graph. 3.2 talks about the first way. I was trying to think, sorry. It's kind of using a table of values. So it's what I was just talking about. Instead of them giving you points to see if it's on a line, you're going to come up with your own points to see if they can fit on a line. Okay, so if I had the equation, this right here. So this is an equation because it has an x and a y in it. And we said to graph this. You can use a table of values to graph this. And what I mean by that is set up a table and just pick some points. So you can, hold that thought just 1 second. You can pick any number you want. So if I pick any number x I want, I can plug any number x I want in and solve for y, and that would tell me where it's at that point. Okay. So I heard Tyler say 0. So if I plug in a 0 for my x, and I work that out, I get 0 plus 6y equals 12. So then divide both sides by 6, so I get y equals 2. So that tells me when x is at 0, my graph is actually at 2. Okay, but I can't draw a line just for that one point because I don't know if it goes this way or this way or this way. Okay, I got to figure out at least one more point. I think the math of 1 makes you find 2. So what's another point? 1. So just keep it small. Do 1. So if I plug in a 1, that's going to give me a fraction. That's fine though. So here you subtract 1 from both sides, and we get 6y equals 11. When you divide by 6, you get y equals 11 over 6. So that point is on this line. If you did that in your calculator, it'd be like 1.833 or something like that. So it's going to be like a 0.1. We're at 1 point like right there. But you can't put a fraction like that in the calculator, or you can't put it into MyMathLab. So you got to find another one. So here, the easiest way to do this, which kind of leads into our next way graph, so that's fine. If I put a 0 in for x, it worked out real nice. Well, what happens if I put a 0 in for y? Should work out real nice again, because what, x plus 6, 0 equals 12. Well, that goes to 0, so x just equals 12. So you can pick a number for x or y and just plug it in to figure out where the graph is at. So this says when x is 12, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. When x is 12, y is at 0. So now I can draw my line through those points. I missed that point, but just because I can't draw straight. So you have the equation of the line right there. So the easiest point to always plug in is plug in an x for your 0 and plug in a y for your 0. If you ever get a fraction, you got to just pick a different number because you can't graph a fraction on MyMathLab. This is probably the least used way because it does take the longest. I like to show you all three ways at once because then you can use any way you want on MyMathLab and it will work on all of them. So the table of values, you just pick random points and plug them in and then get the other number. So you pick numbers for x and give you a y, or you can pick a number for y and it will give you an x. All right, so what this graph right here has 2 points that we're going to use on our next section. This point right here crosses the y-axis, and it is called the y-intercept. Called the y-intercept because the intercept means that where it meets, where that line meets that line. So right here, this one's called the x-intercept because that's where it crosses the x-axis. So the next way to graph, which I believe kind of getting into 3.3 now,